Good evening. Welcome to Glasgow's Back to School Night. My name is Charles Hansen, and if you need a translation to this YouTube video, the instructions are in the slide deck as the screen is showing. I teach Algebra 1, the honors sections this year, as well as pre-algebra. And again, my name is Charles Hansen. A little bit about me. I was born and raised in Dallas, Texas, but I've lived here in the DC area for 35 years. I am not a fan of the Cowboys or Washington's football team. I absolutely love teaching math. My bachelor's degree comes from Vanderbilt University, where I majored in history, minored in mathematics, and my master's degree is from the University of Texas at Austin, Hook'em Horns. My wife and I have 3 children. 2 of them are in college, one a senior in high school. Our oldest is actually at his college, but our other 2 are also suffering through distance learning. Our daughter is a sophomore in college, and all of her courses are online this semester, and our high school senior, all of his courses are online, at least until probably late October. So I certainly can commiserate with you enduring this right now. I also want to point out that I've been there. All 3 of our kids were middle schoolers at one time as well, so I completely understand what you're going through. Hang in there, it does get better. My wife and I, our family has got 3 pets, a couple of beagles, and a 3rd pet. You'll have to ask your child what our 3rd pet is. A little bit more about me. Absolutely love the outdoors. We have a farm in West Virginia, and I spend as much time there as possible. Some weekends, certainly most of the summer, and a lot of breaks, I'm able to get out to West Virginia and absolutely love it there. So learning Algebra 1 and pre-algebra, really any math as far as I'm concerned, I think that students learn best when they work together. We call it collaboration. And that's just not a math skill, that's a life skill that they're going to need as they graduate high school and move on to whatever they're going to do. So be able to work productively together. I want to make certain that all my students feel safe and supported in the classroom. I try very hard to connect with all of my students' communities. It's a little tougher this year. Last year, for example, and the year before that, I actually had office hours at the Woodrow Wilson Library in the Colmore neighborhood. So that really allowed me to connect with the community of a lot of my students, and I hope I'm able to do that again later this year. And lastly, I want students to feel positive about themselves and their ability to learn. That's just absolutely key for them to have the confidence to what might be a tough subject with their math course. So we work very hard on that. I want students to participate and speak up. The days when I learned math where I could just quietly sit back, take notes on the lectures, and work by myself on the practice sheets no longer exist, fortunately. So I want students participating, asking questions, working with their colleagues, on a lot of different types of activities. They need to be on time, even though this is a virtual environment to start the year. We have a lot to cover in a shorter amount of time, so I please want them to be on time and complete their assignments. Last thing I want to mention is I want students to become comfortable with productively struggling. And this is hard for them to understand. When I go over this concept at the beginning of the year, I often have students say, "What, Mr. Hansen, you want us to struggle?" And the answer is yes, so long as it's productive. I had a student last year, early in the year in algebra, who I also had the previous year for Math 7 honors. And there was actually an admin in the room visiting, and the admin asked them what they thought students needed to be successful in order to do in order to be successful. And this particular student who I had for Algebra 1 honors last year and Math 7 honors the year before, blurted out, "Mr. Hansen wants us to fail." Certainly don't want them to fail. I want them to struggle productively. And I corrected him, and he said, "Oh, that's right. Yes, struggle," which I never understood. Well, I hope that most students, do understand what I mean by productive struggle. I don't want them to be comfortable all the time. So much of our learning happens on the edge of our comfort zones, or sometimes even moving beyond them. So that's what I'm trying to emphasize with that. For parents of pre-algebra students of mine, note that I team teach pre-algebra with Miss Abby Voss. So I would encourage you to take a look at her slide deck as well if you're interested. Here's our curriculum this year for Algebra 1. We start with a couple of units that are largely review: expressions and operations, equations and inequalities. And then we really dive into a lot of new stuff. Functions has some review, but also a lot of new items. Lines, we dig into much more deeply the concepts of slope and intercepts. Systems of equations and inequalities will be completely new to students, working with more than one equation. Exponents and radicals, they only probably just barely touched on in their previous math. Polynomials is almost completely new. Quadratics is completely new, and variation is as well. So it's a challenging high school transcript course, and particularly the honors version, which is what I teach. For pre-algebra, we start out the year with our real numbers. That includes consumer applications. And that's what we're doing currently. We move on to linear functions, algebraic expressions, and then some items that they probably haven't seen before: the Pythagorean theorem, transformations, some geometry units, and then our statistics and probability units at the end of the year. Grading and assessments. We're going to probably have a lot more formative assessments this year in class than we've had in the past. Summative assessments are typically the larger tests that we give at the end of units. Other feedback, there'll be homework and classwork, grades and SIS as well. So look for all of those. Every Monday during our distance learning, there will be asynchronous or homework type work, although all of it's at home at the moment. And those are also going to be important. Sometimes we'll grade those as formatives. Other times we'll grade them as homework. Keep in mind that for both of those categories, they are worth the same amount, 10% of a student's quarterly grade. Teacher support. On Blackboard 24/7, which parents also have access to. You don't need help from your student to get in. My office hours are posted. The class syllabus is posted. My contact information is posted, and we'll update the weekly grids on Blackboard 24/7. There's a lot more detail on Google Classroom, including all of the assignments that students are working on. Of course, for Google Classroom, you'll need to ask permission of your student to see that. The grid, as I've mentioned, is going to be both on Google Classroom as well as on Blackboard 24/7. We will use a lot of different online resources. Of course, Blackboard Collaborate and Google Classroom, but a lot of others as well. Discovery Math Textbook. For algebra, we use a textbook called MathSpace, which is online. Desmos, we're going to do a lot of activities there. Edpuzzle, and many, many others that your students will be using throughout the year. My contact information there, best way to reach me is by email, cmhansen@fcps.edu. I promise I'll get back to you within 24 hours. How can you best support your child? Ask them, what are you learning in class? Let me see your grid. Rather than the mistake I often made as the parent of a middle school student, how was school today? And the answer is almost invariably fine. So maybe you can elicit a little bit more in-depth conversation by asking them specifically, what are you learning in class? And then about the homework, what assignments do you have to do? What do you need to complete them? Let's look at that grid together. So encourage you to kind of take that approach. I think from what I've seen initially, these first couple of weeks, most students are getting their asynchronous work in, so I've been very pleased. Supplies, pens and pencils, always for math class, especially once we get back in the classroom. They all have agendas. They also have an online agenda on Google Classroom that we're encouraging them to use. Glasgow is a big believer in binders. They can also have a loose leaf paper for that note for that binder, but I would really encourage for my math students to have a notebook. I've encouraged them to put either Algebra 1 or pre-algebra on that notebook and their names, a place where they can keep in one spot notes that they take, some scribbling out their thoughts as they're working collaboratively on a task with their colleagues and things like that. And then they're going to be doing so much work on their brand new laptops. We are looking forward to a terrific year. Hopefully we'll be back in the classroom physically within the building here in the not too distant future. Thank you.